How to Create a Glitch Monologues Season 29 Chapter 6. This is Season 29 of How to Create a Glitch in the Matrix Monologues Episode 6. In this episode, we will be elaborating the radiation of orthogonal thought in our explanation from the last two episodes. The process of exegesis in the generation of orthogonal thought involves the sloughing off of one's non-consensuality, one's shadow self, through the removal of the personal inherent to the experience of a dissonant consensuality. However, preserved in the product of exegesis remains some residual tension, which radiates out through orthogonal thought. Thus, the product of exegesis in its consumption by some other translates the inhibition of the generator to the consumer of the product of exegesis. The inhibition represented by the dissonant consensuality, in other words, results in a lack of inhibition in its consumption. The reactive feelings generated as a result of the consumption of the product of exegesis are expressed, in substitution for the expression of the dissonant consensuality. In effect, the generation of the product of exegesis preserves the tension in the product of exegesis, the asynchronization, while the actual experience of the dissonant consensuality is appropriated separately. In other words, it is as if by removing the personal from the experience, one is separating the tension from the consequences, each of which are appropriated separately by other system members. The personal preserves the experience, which migrates according to the presence of social reinforcement, but the tension radiates separately to the consumers of the product of exegesis. In generating a corresponding reactive orthogonal thought, some other, who consumes the product of exegesis, is again sloughing off the consensuality of the generator, reacting through a non-consensual space. Again, in effect, this produces some reactive emotionality, some expression of an incongruous or oblique unrelated emotion. Thus, inhibition begets expression. Orthogonal thought radiates to produce more orthogonal thought, and a chain reaction is produced. In effect, orthogonal thought and the production of the product of exegesis exhibits properties that might be best represented by the splitting of an atom. Supposing, for example, that the product of exegesis was consumed by others utilizing the same capacity for orthogonal expression, the result would be a gradual irradiation of the system with a loss of emotional regulation, the expression of orthogonal impulses, a disruption of the ordinary processes of a social system. Nevertheless, this would first require the consumers of the product of exegesis accept the ultimate consequences of their consumption of the product. That's the end of the podcast for today. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe.